Here to address building a distinctive B2B energy brand, we're pleased to welcome Roland Punt, Head of Marketing for Sympower. Sympower has become one of the leading European flexibility service providers, standing at the forefront of transformative energy solutions. They enable businesses, renewable energy producers, battery owners, and other energy stakeholders to generate new revenue through participation in balancing and other energy markets. By enabling smarter energy management, Sympower plays a critical role in stabilizing its electricity grid. So welcome, Roland.
Thank you. Thank you. Great to be here.
So I'd love to start off by hearing a bit about Sympower's story. Can you share your story of how Sympower was founded?
I joined myself a few years ago in 2021, but Sympower was already founded in 2015, so almost 10 years ago, as a flexibility service provider. And the goal was really to accelerate the transition, really a purpose-driven startup. Was founded by Simon, started in the Nordics, in Estonia, and there is also the tech team. Sympower quickly after that joined a startup accelerator program with Rockstart in Amsterdam. And then they grew a lot, started in Finland, what seems like a first interesting market for Sympower, as the grid operator was just opening up the market for independent companies like Sympower. I think they started even as a B2C company and pivoted quickly towards B2B, and that seems to be a more interesting market for balancing, for flexibility. Very mission-driven company, here to speed up the transition, as I said, and here to go to countries, to markets where we can make the most impact. And that's also great of the product of Sympower, is that when we have more customers, more revenue, it also means that we have a bigger positive impact on the grid.
How important is demand-side flexibility for grid stability and renewable energy generation?
Yeah, I think it's super important, but on the other hand, there's also not one silver bullet for the whole transition or to allow to more clean energy. But I think it's one of the solutions that are here and that are ready to be used, and they're also very, very clean. I think demand-side flexibility or demand response, how other people call it, it leverages existing infrastructure or machines or processes that are already there to balance the grid. So it doesn't require additional investment. It doesn't cost a lot to implement it, and it makes companies also benefit from energy prices, from higher energy prices. And I think it stands out as one of the most cost-effective flexibility options available for the grid today.
Thanks for the introduction. So moving on to our discussion around the product and communication, we'd like to discuss how your business model, which states our customers don't pay us, we pay them, and how is this offering unique?
Well, when people or companies think of energy, they normally think of cost. How can you pay less for your energy, especially when the prices are rising? How to get a better contract? And high prices are normally terrible for companies as their production costs go up, but they can also benefit. With flexibility, they become a more active player and can also actually benefit from high prices or fluctuations in prices, as long as they have some flexibility in the way they consume or produce energy. Maybe a nice anecdote is that in Greece, we saw that the offer was so good that when we communicated the offer via some advertising, that our customers or our potential customers thought it was a scam. They thought it was too good to be true, that you can earn money, earn revenue with just being available or giving away a bit of flexibility. So yeah, we see in multiple campaigns that getting money for simply being available or maybe sometimes being switched on or switched off can generate really serious revenues for companies. And besides that, also from a sustainability perspective, it makes sense that being more flexible in how we use and produce energy is a very sustainable approach. I would say, as with any product, instead of buying a new item, even if it's made slightly more sustainable, the most sustainable choice is normally to reuse what's already there, what you already have, like with clothing or plastic bottles, etc.
Great. And how is Sympower distinctive? What makes you different from other companies or your competitors?
Yeah, good question. I think we're growing so fast. So I must say, like in different countries. So this answer also depends a bit on the country. So more and more companies claim to do something similar in this flexibility space. They are building maybe similar software, and that's great because this market will and needs to grow exponentially. But these services are also very new and technologically innovative. I think very few have actually real life experience as Sympower does in so many countries, markets, and with so many industries, and also for almost 10 years now. I think that's an important USP to really have the practical experience, and that it's not only like a story with only not the story. It's we are more than a startup with a story. We're now going to the more like scale up phase. So also we build a software platform. Actually, that's the core of our business, and that is offering these services to many countries and many energy markets, and that's all built in house. And we are independent. We are not owned by another company, and we are not an energy company or utility. And it gives our customers the opportunity to work with us, but besides that, with any other energy provider they like. And lastly, also I think our green emission, and actually that's also one of the reasons I decided to join Sympower. I really see in the whole company that it's really like a purpose-driven organization, really here to make the grid a little bit more sustainable and to accelerate the transition. And it's I see it really in the daily habits, daily life of the people here.
That's really refreshing, and having that purpose, I think, is really strong. And just sort of throwing a question in there, you mentioned that you operate in different geographies across different countries. So your communication style is different. So do you have any stories linked to how you differ your messaging, your product, your communication style across different geographies?
I think it also depends a bit on the maturity of the market and of course the different audiences. I think in some countries and some markets, it really works well to show how much of a purpose-driven company we are. That we are B Corp, that we work with climate to remove our carbon emissions, etc. So that we really show that we're here to accelerate the transition. But maybe in other countries, it helps to focus more on the revenue. So what's in it for them? Maybe they are less busy with the greener part of the energy sector. And then, of course, you also have different audiences, right? You can have customers who are normally businesses that can benefit, that can earn revenue with our solutions. But there are also potential partners that we can partner up with and work together with. So, of course, to those, we have a slightly different message.
Great. And then how are you tackling misconceptions of demand-side flexibility?
Yeah, I think for me, the energy sector is really complex. Like when I started 3 years ago, for me, it was all relatively new and I learned a lot. It was really a steep learning curve. And what Sympower does is so technically advanced that I think the experts, they cannot prevent it from explaining it in a very complex and technical way. Yeah, so I think on the other side, also the sector, the energy sector is quite traditional. And what I see also is if I walk around at fairs or if I see online, is that many companies are explaining things very technical, very complex, using buzzwords or acronyms that I don't even understand myself yet sometimes. And I work now 3 years in the sector. While on the other hand, I think that the customers, like the companies that can benefit from these solutions, they are normally not that technical. They don't understand all the ins and outs of the energy sector. Well, they are the companies that need to become more flexible, that can be more proactive in the energy transition. So for that reason, we create a lot of content aimed at them in a very lay language, debunking misconceptions. We like to create content in terms of articles, white papers, videos, case studies, infographics, animations, etc. Creating a lot of content in lay language. And I'm convinced that B2B companies should do that, should create their own in-house content as they have the experts and the expertise. And it's difficult to outsource that.
You just mentioned that the product, the technology you have is complex. Can you talk us through demand response for kids and how you're able to take something that is quite complex and engage with children on it?
Demand response for kids. Well, it's a book explaining demand side flexibility or demand response to kids. And well, as I said, I think the sector is quite complex and the products that we have are quite complex. So we try also to challenge ourselves to go the other way, to try to explain it as simple as possible. And of course, it's fun then to try to explain it to a kid, to a 5-year-old. If they can understand it, then everyone can understand it. I'm really proud of this one. I think this is also a great example of how creative our team is, our marketing communications team. And to be honest, I was actually traveling for some weeks during this time when they made it, and they started this very fun, creative project by themselves, and ended up even printing the books that are now being handed out to new partners or investors. So really cool. Yeah, we thought it was really fun to go the complete on the way, to try to explain these concepts to kids, to challenge ourselves to explain it as simple as possible. And I think that's important also, to do things that are fun, that can help the brand, the internal brand, the external brand. And I believe this is super important besides the marketing efforts that are more trackable or more focused on direct sales.
So interesting. So we'll also put a link in, because I know that you have some videos and some pages on your website. So in the comments and description part of the podcast, we can definitely link. So if people want to know more about it and see the visuals of it, we can definitely link it.
Right.
Okay. So moving on to your brand part of the conversation, what unique challenges do business-to-business or B2B energy companies face in building a strong brand?
Yeah, good question. I always like branding, but if you talk about the challenges, it also means a bit what we mean with an energy company and a brand. I must say, like, my experience is now more with the startup scale-up side. For the last year, and I think that you really need to understand what a brand is. Like many companies that do something technically challenging, innovative, they have a great solution, but maybe underestimate that from the beginning you can already work on the brand, and that the brand goes far beyond your product itself. And I think for brand building or even marketing in general, for many startups, this part comes a bit later. That they first focus on of course, selling their first product to their first client or getting product market fit, etc. So I think some challenges are in this sector is maybe the sector is a bit traditional. So sometimes events and more offline events work quite well yet. So they are less open for more online brand and marketing efforts. Depending on the company, it could be challenging maybe with a more traditional leadership, because it's difficult to prove efforts related to branding or brand in the beginning, to prove the ROI of it. So then you really need to have the trust to be able to start activities regarding that. And as a startup, of course, there's less money. And if you have less money, you need to be more creative if you want to do any campaign or improve anything related to the brand. So I think those are some of the challenges.
Yeah, there's some challenges, and I hear that quite often. You're not the first to note them. And then, do you your brand has changed from startup to scale up, as you noted earlier in the conversation. Do you have any examples of how you've been creative?
Yeah. Yeah, true. I think when I joined Sympower at the start, I think one of my first projects was to work a bit on the visual style of Sympower, so that we have consistency in the way we look, in the way we feel, in terms of logo, in terms of colors we use, how we present ourselves in presentations, the website, etc. So really working a bit on visual parts in the beginning. That was also what I like, and that was also where my background was in. So that was a good project for me to start with.
Nice. And what advice would you give startups in the energy sector when trying to establish a brand?
Yes, for startups, as they're new, they have maybe little following yet, little people, little money, etc. I would say they should do a lot. I do not think they should overthink it and things, but really start making things, making content. And I think maybe social media is a good example. Like many startups take it serious, and that's good. Social media is very useful. But in the beginning, I also don't think you need to overthink it, as your audience is still very small. You have very little reach, so you can play around and test. And later, when the company grows, when the company gets bigger, of course, then you measure more what works, what not. But I think as a startup, you can play around and do things. Don't be afraid to try. Yeah, and the other point is maybe what I said earlier is also on the visual part. I think, especially in the energy sector, there are many innovative companies that have an amazing product and a solution, but maybe they forget a bit the brand side, like that it's good if a company has a distinctive style, if it's consistent throughout the way they present themselves on events, on presentations, on the website, that there is some consistency. And that is also super important if you're growing a company, that people recognize you.
Linking to consistency, how important is sustainability messaging in the energy sector?
Yeah, of course, it's important, and of course, especially if it's part of your mission, like for Sympower. But yeah, I do think people get more and more allergic to greenwashing. So I think you should not overpromise in any ways. And also internally, I think your own employees can become cynical if you overpromise too much. So yeah, I would say it's super important, but really make sure like who you're talking to, who you're targeting with your sustainability messaging. And I think what I said also earlier, maybe you care a lot, maybe your employees cares a lot, maybe the investors even care a lot about it, but it might be that in a certain country your customers actually do care less. So then you might communicate it in a different way. So yeah, I would say adjust your message for the audience you try to reach.
What role does thought leadership play in establishing a brand?
Yeah, I think it's important, definitely. As many companies, they have really a lot of subject matter experts, and I think you should give them a floor. Make sure that you create content with them, and that you show as a company that you know what you're talking about, that you're the expert in your niche. Yeah, so many startups, they have people that know a lot about their topic, and I think it's great as a marketeer, or if you work in branding, to help to get them a voice, to interview them, write articles, make videos, and you constantly show on different channels the knowledge you have as a company.
And talking about social media and different channels, what role does social media play in B2B branding?
Yeah, super important, and maybe even more than before. It's free. The reach is great, and I think you can reach a lot of people, not only customers or partners, but also I think people are searching jobs on social media. Investors are active on social media, so it's a great way to position yourself as a company. I think it's good to be very active on social media, to show your brand, your promises, what you do, but also not to aim to be on all social media platforms, I would say. I think it's much better to be very strong on LinkedIn, for example, to post there very consistent with relevant content, than to be on six different platforms and have almost no impact or following there. So I think it's completely fine to be on one platform for many years for any company, and be strong there.
That makes sense. And what trends do you see shaping the future of B2B branding, specifically in the energy sector?
I would say less greenwashing. I think this is an important one. Also, I think like especially the younger millennials and the Gen Z, they prioritize authenticity and social responsibility. I think they are more critical to the places they work. I think employee advocacy to build more trust as a brand. I said earlier that content is super important, but also, of course, there are more and more channels, companies, people out there that create content on a mass scale that maybe use AI to make content that is that is maybe not great, that is maybe even a bit fake at times. So I think to make content that is real, that is made by employees, is super important to build trust. Yeah, and I think sustainability should be really in the core. It should not be a nice to have extra, but really as in the basis of every new startup, scale up company. Because I think that buyers and also employees want to partner or work with companies that are really committed to sustainability and more ethical practices.
Thank you for your concluding thoughts on that. And I think that boils down to authenticity. A lot of points that you made there cover the authenticity to build trust. So really like that as a concluding opinion piece. Also really liked previously earlier in the conversation when you said, don't be afraid to try. I think that's also great advice with some real nuggets of content, opinions, knowledge that you've shared with us today. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Very nice to be here. Thanks.